I've been busy. Look at that. We're almost ready to put these guys back together. So take the next 10 minutes to see what I've been up to in the meantime, and then come back and let's get on with it. I prepped the sprocket side cover and sump and gave them a coat of high temp paint. And while they were curing in the oven, I got to work masking and plugging the crankcase halves. I even 3D printed a large plug for the alternator hole. I spent a while looking at recommended methods for masking the cases. I ended up going for this technique, where you lay the tape on, and then using a soft face hammer, tap away at the sharp edges. This breaks the tape, leaving a nice clean edge. And if needed, a gentle file helps to encourage it along too. It works really well, just takes quite a while. I gave it a quick blow down to remove any tape residue and dust, and then gave it a good coat of paint. Then everyone's favourite bit, peeling the tape off. I also removed the silicone bungs from the holes. Of course, whenever I'm working in the garden, I can always expect my work to be thoroughly inspected by the dog. Back in the workshop, it's time to give the new main bearing shells a clean up with brake cleaner. I also gave the bores a wipe down too, making sure they're perfectly clean and dry before the shells go in. Making sure their locating tabs went in their respective holes, I worked my way down, slotting them in as flush as possible. I put assembly lube in each of the shells before dropping in the crankshaft for one more oil clearance check. Now you've seen all this in the last video, so I'll speed on through. Lining up my measuring card, they all measured a smidge larger than the marker for 0.05mm, which puts them nicely back into the service spec. With those in and checked, I laid the cases out and prepared the first round of components. It's officially on its way back together now. I grabbed the new O-rings for the crankcase oil passageways and gave them a rub in clean engine oil. Then I fitted them in their respective locations. Then I fitted the oil control dowel, making sure it was the right way around. I smeared a generous amount of assembly lube into the bearings, checked the new cam chain matched the old one, and fitted it to the crankshaft. Then I lowered the crankshaft into the upper case, being sure to trap a finger in the process. Ow! Next up was the shift drum, so I smeared some oil on all the surfaces and gently inserted it in, giggity. I gave it a quick spin to make sure all was moving freely. Then it was the oil spray bar that lubricates the gear clusters. A drop of thread lock on the bolt, and then I torqued it up to the spec in the manual. Shift forks were next, starting with the front one. I'd given these a rub and oil too to help them go in, and was careful to line up the pins with the channels in the shift drum. I slipped the retaining clip into the cutouts at the end of the shafts, put the bolts in, and torqued them up to spec. put the idler gear in next, sliding the shaft through the case. This is the gear that joins the starter motor spindle with the starter clutch on the alternator shaft. I pressed in the bearing using a big socket and some threaded bar, checked it span freely, then grabbed the starter clutch and dropped it down into the case. I grabbed the alternator shaft and the spacer and slid the shaft through from the far side. Through the starter clutch and the spacer and out through the bearing. It's all held in by a retaining plate, so I fitted that and torqued up the bolts. Time for the transmission shafts. I fitted the half moon ring that locates the larger bearing, then I lowered the output shaft into place, making sure the locating pin lined up with the bearing on the other end. I did the same thing with the input shaft, making sure the gears meshed together nicely. I moved the gears to the neutral position and gave them a spin to check they all move freely. I fitted a new bearing and slid the shifter mechanism into place. The tension arm spring was a tad fiddly to fit, but after a bit of work I got it in. I torqued the bolt up and rotated the shaft into the neutral position. You can tell it's there because the tension roller sits in the divot between first and second gear. Now it's about this time in these videos where you have to try and guess what the mistake I'm making is. But for now, just watch me refit this oil pump, making sure that the locating dowel goes in the right place and all the bolts are torqued up to spec. So now that we're caught up, it's time for a dry run. I want to test everything goes together and works properly before I start smearing silicone sealant over everything. I checked again to make sure the shift drum and forks were in the neutral position, as well as the gear clusters. Then I picked up the lower half to fit it on the other side. If you're wondering why I'm holding it strangely, I can't fit these in my oven to cure the paint, so until the engines run up to temperature, this paint isn't fully cured yet, and I want to avoid messing it up while assembling. I had to reset the front shift fork as it had dropped back when lifting, but with it moved back into position, it all fitted together nicely. Everything still spanned freely, and there was no gaps left between the mating surfaces. The next job is to make sure I can find all the gears. Now with Kawasaki's, they had 3 ball bearings that sit inside the 5th gear on the output shaft. They help getting the bike into neutral when stationary. And when the shaft's spinning, the balls fly outwards, which allows the shifter to engage second gear. The problem when testing on the bench, you need to spin the shaft to be able to test the whole gear set. Okay, so I'm in neutral. Neutral's good. First gear. Yep. Alright, so second gear should be Yep, second. Come on, all the way. There it is, there's third, fourth, fifth, sixth, sixth, fifth, fourth, third, second, neutral, first. Success. I gave the mating surfaces of each crankcase a wipe down with brake cleaner to remove any oil residue. These need to be really clean. Then I grabbed the new crankshaft end cap. This thing took 3 weeks to come over from mainland Europe, and it held me up getting on with this thing for ages. I opened a fresh tube of 3-bond 1215 and smeared a little on the cap and fitted it into the lower case. I checked the manual to see exactly which surfaces needed sealing, although I had to turn it round to match the case in front of me. I started by running a thin bead of sealant over all the surfaces. I'll smear it across evenly once I'm done, and I can touch up any bits that need it. The main thinking here is that it's a lot easier to add more than it is to take any away. Plus I don't really want any excess squeezing out and into the crankcase, blocking an oil gallery and blowing me up at 12,000 RPM. And start to work out how I'm going to hold you. Let's hold you by there. No, that's not going to work. We're okay. Let me just rest my fingers a bit better. Okay, that's going to be my handle. God, it's not bloody light. Oh, and that feels like I'm going to let go. Okay. Where's my dowel at the back? There it is. Well, that's relatively painless. That's all in. And heaven forbid this rotates nicely. I checked around the edges and I saw a nice consistent overspill that assured me I'd gotten a good amount. Now, hopefully for the final time for a long time, I torqued up the crankshaft pinch bolts to spec, once at 22 Newton meters, followed by 44. Now, did you guess it? It's time to find out what Tom's mistake of the day was. Here's something funny. You may have already spotted this. This fucker. I mean, this very convenient, very important part of the motorbike engine isn't meant to be in yet. I can't get to my bolt holes. I'm throwing bolts everywhere. Okay, out that comes. Okay, that's better. I started tightening down the bolts on the lower crankcase, starting with that long one by the gearbox. It's 28. Drop that. And the rest are 25, so that's 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. 25 Newton meters. Okay, just about. There we go. Right. Do I, because this is going to be fucking heavy, do I want to bring... I just don't like the fact there's no bloody mounts over there. Okay, right. Let's turn it over, lay it onto this. How heavy is this going to be? Yeah. Right. Let's do it. Squeeze that in there. Right. Now I'm walking over. I can rotate this down. I mean, the paper's destroyed at this point, but it doesn't really matter. Look at that. Fucking engineer over here, mate. With the engine flipped over, I could fit the remaining bolts that go down from the top. With everything torqued up, I fitted some threaded bar through the rear mounts and adapted the bracket of an engine stand to fit. I used some right angle steel bar with copper washers to space it away from the engine. Now I just need to get it on the stand. Of course I've gone too far in. Out you come. There we go. Look at that. There we go. That's good, isn't it? Look at it on the stand here. It's going to make putting it back together a lot easier. Right, what's left? Sprocket side cover needs rebuilding and refitting. We've got the alternator drive gears and everything around that side, and then the clutch. Yeah, those side bits back together. And then we've got pistons, cylinders, head. Oh, getting there. Cool, right. I'm getting excited. I'll see you in a few weeks.